Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Chainsaw Man Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I want to talk about that outro. That outro seems so chaotic, but I really like it. Just chaotic, like, visually with just everything going on, but also the song itself. I'm not well versed enough in, like, a lot of Japanese... I guess I'm thinking that kind of be considered maybe metalcore, but like heavier bands, like the only ones like it kind of reminds me of like Maximum the Hormone. Specifically, it's like the song they did for Death Note. I was like, didn't they do an opening and ending for Death Note? I feel like there's a specific song of theirs that it kind of reminds me of. But like I said, I'm not well versed enough in a lot of like heavier Japanese bands. It also kind of gives me the same vibe. Well, like the only other like heavier Japanese band I know or aware of is Earthist. But anyway, tangents and all that. I like the outro, just like with just how chaotic and just like chaotic the instrumentals and vocals are, and then it just like gets to that like calm point where just like the instrumentals fade, and it's so interesting, especially like when the scene is like Denji bowing down before like this angelic goddess that is Makima. So just like that for that part of the song to match that particular visual, I think it's just neat. Either way, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode after Power killed that demon. Apparently, public safety isn't supposed to step over civilian hunters, and doing so could actually get you arrested. And I think it's so interesting that Power, like it, because for a second I was curious. It's probably because I'm wondering, does Aki like Makima? Maybe he doesn't like her, but maybe he respects her so much. It's unclear. Denji, we know how he feels about her, but I was wondering if Power does too, because Power got very meekish when like it just seems like she kind of kowtows towards Makima, just being like, she was so like I didn't do it. This human over here, he told me to do it. Denji's like, what? She's a filthy liar, you know? And it's like that whole back and forth. And she's like, oh, I want both of you to get along, and I hope you do better next time. And just like Power's just so like docile and being like, yeah, okay, just do what I want you to do and stuff. So it's like, even Denji's picking on. It's like, that is interesting. I am curious what their history is. Once again, we know Aki cares for Makima because she apparently saved him. I wonder if the same thing happened in Power's case. Like, or what is it about Makima that she just gets so very meekish, even to the point she doesn't even want to look her in the eyes because she knows she's in the wrong in this situation? Which obviously even Denji's kind of getting to the point, like he's like, yeah, I know I'm not going to be able to work with this person. It's just like, if it wasn't for the fact that I want to touch her boobs, but it's like, I can never be friends with this person. There's no point in really trying. But it turns out we see that Power has a soft spot for cats. In fact, she had one named Meowy who was taken by a devil, and she can't get it back. And she's like basically it's like, I'll let you cop a field. Because at first he was like, oh yeah, cats suck. I can't understand that. Are you an idiot or something? But then it was like, yeah, but he's like, now if it was a dog, I'd understand. He's like, obviously he's coming from his biased opinion of like Pochita, but the moment she was like, yeah, I'll let you cop a field if like grab all my boobs if you could help, if like you could get me Meowy back. And he was like, what? We have to, oh, that damn devil, how dare he take something precious from you as a cat? It's like, yeah, sure, trying to be so honorable, Denji, but Power's like okay with it enough to be like, sure. I think it's also interesting too that you have to get like special permission for Power to kind of, because she can't go out about on her own. Makes sense, she's a fiend, so you have to keep her on a tight enough leash that someone outside of a fiend situation always has to like stay with her. That was interesting too, that despite Power being so like worried about Meowy and stuff like that, I think it's interesting that Denji had brought up the whole point of like, he's like, oh, I get it, not being able, he's like, I can't like Pochita. He's like, yeah, I had Pochita, and now it's like Pochita's a part of me. So it's like, yeah, but he's still kind of alive. So I get that whole point. But Power's like, oh, humans are so stupid. Like, oh, you think Pochita's alive in your heart? Like, it's like being alive just means being able to be out and about and living. And it's like, if they're inside of you, then they're not living. So that's stupid. It's like that whole like, yeah, you're in my heart, you're part of my heart, which, you know, Denji doesn't even mean that figuratively. Pochita is literally a part of his heart, is his heart. So But for him, he just kept checking out her boobs, being like, it's all going to be worth it. I've got to go through with this. No matter what she says that's annoying me, it's all going to be worth it in the end if I'm able to touch some boobs. Like, that's all the motivation he needs. We also have Makima kind of reporting to, I guess, the higher-ups, the government she reports to, about, well, it's more like Japan's like, okay, let's hope all we have to worry about are the devils. That there's, like, they talk about America and Russia, and I guess it's like, hopefully we won't have to deal with any other countries like messing with us. Hopefully devils will be the only thing we have to deal with. But it's like, yeah, like how is Power and Denji doing? Which, don't even call them by their names, but like their most recent recruits, obviously. But I wonder, is Power like super recent recruit? With the context of this episode, it feels like Power is a super recent, and like she probably like doesn't have that much seniority over Denji, meaning like she hasn't been here as long. I thought she'd been a part of the squad for a while, but it seems like she's still in the testing process, just like Denji is. So, and Makima's like, oh yeah, like one is I'm waiting for the potential, the other one seems interesting, and then later on when she's in the car with Aki, which Aki's like, I wouldn't call him interesting, I call him disgusting. You know, it's like, why do you like, they keep find him so fascinating? And she's like, well, she talks about something that's interesting. She's like, right, a devil's name, like a name can carry a lot of weight, and, you know, the more power behind the name. So it's like, yeah, a devil, like, coffee isn't that, you know, crazy of a thing. So if there's a coffee devil, then they're probably going to be on the weaker side. But what about a car devil? Like, when you think of a car, you think of someone getting hit by a car and potentially running over and dying. It's like, well, you imagine a car devil. So it's like a name can carry a lot of weight. And it's like, what is Digi? He can turn into a chainsaw devil. And it's like, chainsaws can be scary and can cause a lot of damage. So for her, that's what she finds so interesting about him. But for Aki, it's the thing of everyone here has their motivations. And for him, it's like, oh, it just wants to live a good life. And it's like, oh, he wants to be friends with devils. He's such an idiot. He's so childish. It's like, first and foremost, Aki, you're coming from that perspective because of your life. But that's the thing. You don't know enough about Denji. You don't know what the circumstances are, what he's been through, what he had to live through before, like, he ended up with his current circumstances. So it's so interesting that you called him out last episode for not, like, respecting your circumstances of, oh, everyone's working hard, everyone has their motivations. You chalk it up to, oh, he just wants to live a good life. When you've had a rough life, living a good life is motivation enough. Because for him, it's like, oh, here I am drinking a drink, quenching my thirst. He's like, but that could be the least of my worries if we kind of continue screwing up and we don't show that we can be successful. So I thought it was interesting when they were approaching the house, going back to Denji and Power, and I was like, is this some kind of trap? Because at first I was like, this is where I started thinking like, oh, is this about Makima? Like, does Power like Makima and thinks that Denji's kind of in the way? I mean, to be fair, like, Aki kind of put Denji through his paces, trying to like scare him off or beat him off. God, beat him off. Phrasing. Beat him up and scare him off is what I was trying to say. I just kind of combined everything last episode, but that didn't work. And he didn't feel it until the last second, but Denji felt that instinct and tried to attack Power, but she ended up knocking him out first. And it turns out what she said as a story wasn't 100% a lie. It was true, but it's not like, oh, we're going to kill this devil and take back Meowy. Meowy's being held hostage, and she has to bring a human for the bat devil to, like, eat. But the problem is, like, he regenerates from Denji's blood, but Denji's blood doesn't taste well, because it's like, makes sense, because he's not human, but he's also not a devil, so it serves the purpose of a human blood, but you can taste the devil in it, so it makes his blood taste disgusting. And even Power look at him like, oh, I can't believe you were such a stupid human in believing me about the story I told, that you did it without hesitation. That's the stupidity of humans. She kind of falls for a similar thing, because Bat Devil's like, oh, you actually brought me a human that doesn't taste good, so because of that, I'm going to punish you, and ends up eating Meowy. Meowy's still in the cage, but we flash back to Power. Like, Power would kill anything that got in her way until she met Meowy. He's like, you know what? I'm going to eat you. Let me fatten you up a little bit. But time and time again passed, and they ended up growing closer. So, and the fact is, the way Power was, it seems like it wasn't that long ago Meowy was taken from her by the Bat Devil. So, like I said, it seems like a really recent joining of public safety. So I'm curious what those circumstances were about. I think she mention something about Makima being the reason why she's here earlier in the episode. Maybe she did, or maybe I'm just like full of shit. And I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm conflating certain aspects of Aki's story because of that. But in that moment, she's like, "Huh, you talked about not being able to pet Pochita anymore, and in this moment, I kind of understand that." And this is what actually set Denji off. Is that he saw that look in her eyes, because he's like, I remember one time I didn't know where Pochita was. I was scared like maybe another devil had gotten him. But then when I made it back home, he was there crying, waiting for me. And he's like, I know that scare and that fear. Like, you didn't know what was going to happen. You were desperate to do anything to get Meowy back, even like toss me to this devil bat. So it's like, I think that, because I mean, if you look at the intro, it does seem like they do have a tight relationship. It seems like he has a very adversarial relationship with Aki, but it seemed like, just based on the intro, it does seem like him and Power kind of hit it off. They seem like they are the two in the group with a weird constitution. So her being a fiend, him being something else entirely, it seems. But just when the bat was flying off, Denji was up there like sucking on its blood, and I was like, I wonder, was he trying to heal himself by drinking some of the devil's blood? And I was wondering that, like, he doesn't eat humans, because devils do go stronger from blood. But I'm like, I wonder, because of his weird constitution, can he grow stronger from drinking devil's blood? He was drinking it, but like, I don't know if it fully worked the way he wanted it to. Maybe it did. Who knows? But yeah, that. Thinking about everything, he revs himself up and transforms. I think it's so interesting, because he had brought that up to Power, but Power thought like, oh yeah, you humans tell such lame jokes. I'm like, I wonder, are chainsaw devils really rare or something? I guess because in her mind, she doesn't really believe his circumstances. Like, she doesn't, like, because she still treats him as a human. So I guess maybe Power doesn't know Denji's circumstances of he's something more. Because even Aki, he takes Makima's word for it because she was there and others were there to witness it, but he wasn't there. So he wanted, because last episode he wanted to see firsthand Denji transform, but Denji didn't. So I mean, his main motivation was, I don't like doing it because it's like a massive loss of blood, and it's just like, that's too much of a deal with. So turns into a city battle, crashing into buildings. Denji actually trying to when you actually look at it in retrospect, is actually kind of interesting. Like, the people he like, I love that the bat tried to throw a car at him. It's like, oh, do you want to like slice this car with a human inside? But he reverts his arms, which for Denji is like, holy shit, I can do that. I didn't know I could do that. I thought my hands stayed chainsaws. It's like, oh, you're gonna save that human? He's like, screw that. You think I'm gonna save this human? He's like, I'm not here to save some dude. I'm doing all this so I can potentially cop a field. I even love like the final line he was having was like, I've been patient. I've been patiently just waiting for an opportunity. I'm going to cop a field. I've waited long enough. But if you think about some of the people, like the first person when like they like slammed into a building, he told a lady to run away. The second person he was looking out for was like a father and child. So, sentimentality there. But it's like, yeah, the first person makes sense because he's like, oh, it's a woman. So, But he's also trying to save the person that he has the best chance of copping a field with, and that's Power. Because it's like, oh, if I save you a Meowy, it's all good, it's all kosher. So I thought it was interesting too. I mean, like him just slicing and dicing the bat, and just once again how destructive that gets. I mean, the public safety is a government organization, so that probably comes out of them, like having to come in. I mean, we know the police get involved with a crime scene and stuff like that, but I'm sure the government has to pay for that. I'm sure that's going to like come out of maybe the budget of the public safety. I'm curious about that. Do they have a special unit that cleans up those crime scenes? Kind of like in Marvel. I always forget their names, but there's a group that exists in the comics. They popped up like once in the MCU. Well, they've actually technically popped up like twice in the MCU. But they're basically a group that cleans up cities after they've been destroyed. Like when superheroes do their thing. I'm curious if there's kind of a similar thing for the government in this universe. I also thought it was kind of pretty neat when the bat is able to like, he turned his mouth into like a cannon. And I just love like the aesthetic of that, especially like when he pushes and like knocks Denji like through the building, but Denji's like, nah, I'm fine. Like I'm ready to cop a field, and then proceeds to slice and dice the the creature, which I love that it's just like badass thing of just like blood raining down, Bat's guts are laying out in the middle of the street, his shirt is open and flowing in the wind. It's just couldn't ask for a more picturesque scene. So I'm excited to see where things kind of take us next episode. I'm assuming we're going to pick up right with like Power, and hopefully Meowy is still okay. I'm sure Power was on the inside of the bat, potentially. Like, I mean, I'm sure like Power could have let herself out, but she probably didn't want to take the chance she might hurt Meowy, or maybe she was so caught up being with Meowy again, or maybe sadly Meowy died on the inside, because like it was in a cage, so it was only a couple seconds, so I doubt there was enough time to like digest him or anything, or digest him or whatever. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm also curious to find out. Well, we know that Power was, because Makima talks about, it's like, right, you're a blood devil beforehand, but I'm curious about Power before becoming a fiend in both fronts of the blood devil, what they were like, what they were about, but also who is the corpse that Power occupies. Like, who were they, and will we ever flash back to that? It feels like that's probably a story within itself, of which I'm interested to find out about. You know, like, does that body belong to someone that's going to be missed? In regards of that body Power possesses, it's like, once again, you possess a corpse, so they're already gone, but I'm curious if the person whose body that is has family that's out looking for them. Stuff like that. It's kind of interesting to think about, so. Either way, I'm excited, like I said, to see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.